Alright, I'll just pause for... Hey everyone, Phobos here, coming at you with the Totem guide for 3.13. So I know I said I'd have this done earlier, but I don't know, there's kind of like a lot to go over because when Hierophant kind of became like, I don't want to say mandatory because it wasn't mandatory for everything, but you know, it was mandatory in a lot of, not mandatory, but it was like, there were a lot of use cases where it was beneficial, right? So they kind of removed something which then made it like serve not as many use cases, which means that a lot of other things kind of open up, and especially they made changes to other things like Inquisitor, which this build is. So I went through and tested kind of like a bunch of things with Ascendant, Inquisitor, Chieftain, etc. to see kind of like what I like. They even considered Elementalist, but this is like the one I'm most confident in, and I think the thing about this one is that it has the damage, right? If you really want to play something in hardcore, I would honestly recommend doing pretty much the same build that I would do last league, except just using the multiple totem support, and you shouldn't really see too much of a change in terms of your actual like DPS bossing, but you might the defensive capabilities and the slows might not be as good because you're kind of like watering down the damage per totem, right? So it does suck in that regard. And in terms of what to pick, so you'd go like, obviously you'd go to Ritual of Awakening, and then you go to Divine Guidance, and then like you could really either go Arcane Blessing or Conviction of Power, whatever one you wanted. If you're going to use like an Immortal Call setup, you actually definitely don't want to use this. It's like a nerf, because you won't be able to drop your charges via Immortal Call. I don't think you'll be able to use Immortal Call like that. So definitely go Arcane Blessing if you want that. This, you can use an Arcane Surge from yourself too, and it'll override the weak one that's given here. So this will be 50% of effect of your Arcane Surge on like your leveled ones, like level 8 or 10, which is actually pretty decent, right? It's not like an insignificant amount of damage. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that in case somebody did want to do a hardcore version of the build. I'm going to be playing this on softcore. I have a bunch of friends that play on softcore and stuff like that, so that's why I'm going to be playing this league probably primarily. Might do something hardcore later on in the league, but definitely starting softcore and playing softcore for a while, and probably for the foreseeable future, I would say. So with that being said, yeah, the reason why I think this run is superior, especially if you're going to play softcore, is because the damage is just really good. And in softcore, you can kind of get away with like your offense beating your defense, as long as you don't mind like occasionally dying to things, if that makes sense, right? So this, you're not going to be dying a lot on this build, I don't think. Like, it's not like that type of squishy, but they're definitely, it has the capacity to get one shot just because it doesn't have a lot of like a raw effective HP, if that makes sense. So looking at the damage numbers and stuff like that, first you can see it does a lot of damage per totem. This is without Divergent Berserk or Val Righteous Fire. Divergent Berserk is something that I'll explain later on. It's kind of expensive, probably, I assume, off the start to get into, and so don't really worry too much about that. But Val Righteous Fire is something you can easily be able to get, probably even first or second day, and doesn't even require really any links or anything. You just link this to like increased duration. You pop it at the start for the spell damage bonus, and you already go up to 1 million damage per totem, which is insane. And this is against Shaper, yeah, and Sirius basically. And I have Shock in here, but I'll explain why in a second, like why I have stuff in here, right? Okay. So basically, why are we going Inquisitor, right? Like, what changed? So this node right here, Battlemage, is absolutely insane. And it has really good synergy with Inevitable Judgment. And I'll show you exactly why. So, gain spell damage added equal to the damage on your main hand weapon. So, what I was wondering when this came out is, like, if it would only be the base damage, or if it would be, like, flat rolls that you had on the weapon. And as it turns out, it's also accounts for flat rolls you have on the weapon. Now, one thing that I will say is I kind of got debated because I added I think I tried to add like fizz damage or something, or I added an item that had fizz damage, and I didn't realize that the way it was worded wasn't to attacks. Like, it just said fizz damage in general, which means that it would normally apply to spells. But because I thought that it was for some reason like an attack-based physical damage modifier, I thought that when I added it to the build, it was giving me damage even through adding stuff to attacks. In other words, like, I thought since it's adding it to the weapon itself, it's gaining, it would still count under the Battlemage thing right here because it's still being applied to the main hand. But that's not how it works. I just want to like show you kind of really quick. So I'll use one of these 2 stones, for example. Hold on. What I mean by this. So we're going to remove this craft, right? I don't know why it crafted 2. I think it just does that automatically when it's like a double craft, right? And we're going to hit save. So I just want you to see what the value is, right? Without the added on those, because that's general added. It's not added to attacks. So 795,555. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add physical damage to attacks, or we can do anything. We'll just do like lightning damage to attacks, right? Because it'll be like a higher value, so you'll be able to see it better. And then we'll save it, right? You can see it's on the ring, but it didn't affect our damage, right? So Battlemage isn't taking into account attack damage you get on things from like rings or whatever that is being put into like your weapon. In terms of the total DPS calculation, it's only going based on what's on your weapon, if that makes sense. So I just wanted to kind of like clarify that. I don't even have to change it back because the damage is pretty insignificant. But yeah, so I wanted to make that clear right out of the gate how it works. But it gives like an insane amount of damage. So this Void Scepter is like pretty damn good, right? This honestly isn't too expensive, but it's like decent for sure. And if I go to equip this in the main hand, we kind of lose a significant amount of damage, right? And even if we equip something like this, which I think is going to be readily available, we gain a pretty significant amount of damage from just like a unique that's going to be pretty easy to come across. I feel like, I think people are going to be kind of onto this, but it's not going to be like like a huge thing. The thing is, they're so common, right? So even though people are probably going to be attuned to this in some sense, it's still going to be relatively cheap. Now, the step up that I had before there is like a 3 tier 1 rapier with 35 crit multiplier in the base, and then getting crit multi. You could honestly, like, you could go even more ham with this, I'm sure. But I think this is a very decent, like, kind of starting thing right here. And you can see, like, this is really good. It's not even that much more damage than the Rebuke of the Vol, though. So you can kind of stick with the Rebuke of the Vol for a while. The one thing about this, though, using this thing, is that you're going to want it, you have to use a scepter, because I don't think you can dual wield a wand in a sword unless they change things, because I think a wand is considered a ranged weapon, right? So, yeah, but you don't even need a triple tier 1 foil. Now, you're going to think, oh, triple tier 1 foil, but it's triple LE tier 1, right? So it's a lot easier to get than a, like a triple fizz prefix tier 1 or something like that. Like, that'd be crazy, but it's much easier to get these. Like, you probably have a bunch of these lying around your fucking thing on standard if you're anything like me, and, like, you see that you roll a triple tier 1, you're like, oh, I don't want to throw it away, because it looks cool, but it's not actually that rare. So, yeah, that's the weapon situation. Now, the weapon itself provides a fuck ton of damage, so you can, like, just, if you want to go Leech, you can also go Leech. There's other ways I'll show that. Actually, hold on. I want to So let's go into the other nodes. Oh, and then Inevitable Judgment. So why Inevitable Judgment is so good, and we'll get to this in a second, right? Just province, but is that it's like it's essentially giving you all pen, right? And against some of the higher bosses, obviously they have kind of a lot of resistance, and getting them into the negative is kind of annoying anyways, in the sense that you're probably gonna have to. It's gonna take more like effort on your part to like keep them in negative resist, because you have to keep things on them, like Frost Bomb and a curse and stuff like that. It's also going to kind of like take up your curse slot, if that makes sense. Whereas this, you can use. I don't even know if I have it on this character. I don't think I do. But yeah, you can just use Sniper's Mark as the one, right? Yeah. See? You can use Sniper's Mark, and yeah, it's the only thing you have to worry about keeping up, basically. You can throw increased duration on it or something like that. So yeah, the gameplay style is just a lot simpler, right? You don't have to worry about keeping all your pen up and stuff like that, and you pen for multiple resistances. Now this node is amazing because it kind of like now better facilitates Inevitable Judgment. The idea is you want your crit chance high. Before it gave some crit chance, but now you actually gain around probably easily 300% crit chance. You know, this is kind of like not good gear that I have. Like the gear I put on isn't optimized. It basically just has like life on it or whatever to simulate like a reasonable life value. But you can definitely get much better gear than all the stuff that I picked out here, and have a higher strength value. So just something to keep in mind there. So that's a really good node. And then this is obviously just a super good node. 16% more elemental damage. Can't really go wrong with that. 8% less damage elemental taken. 8% less elemental damage taken, rather. Super good, right? So that's pretty much the Ascendancy in a nutshell. And it provides like a fuck ton of damage. Now, you're probably going to be seeing a bunch of... The tree itself kind of looks fairly standard, but then you're seeing the cluster jewel situation, so I'm going to explain a bit about that. Now, I think like the optimal thing to do here, honestly, that would save you a lot of points, is if you can find like a Megalomaniac with like any of these, like Shrieking Bolts, Astral Inspiration, Sleepless Sentries. Those are the ones that we need, really. So it's Shrieking Bolts because of the taunt, Astral Inspiration for the Arcane Surge, since this is a Blood Magic build, and then Sleepless Sentries. Like if you can find anything like that on a Megalomaniac for somewhat cheap, that's like optimal. Or Cold Conduction is the other one that you really want. And that kind of like saves you, because it's just going to be much more point efficient using a Megalo. But it's probably going to be hard to... Here's the thing. I think if one comes up, it might not be that expensive, because it's going to be pretty niche, right? Like, there's not going to be a lot of builds that want those things together. But it's just a matter of it coming up at all. Like, I didn't want to make it like you count on getting a Megalo like that. So, assuming you can't get a Megalomaniac, which is just, if you don't know what a Megalomaniac is, it's like a medium cluster jewel that has just 3 notables on it. So you'd put it into here, and it would just have, like, let's say, Ancestral Inspiration, Shrieking Bolts, and Sleepless Sentries. So, yeah. But if you can't do that, I use a spell damage large here, and the reason for that is because it gives Ancestral Inspiration. It's not that the cold one has bad mods, but it's just that we really want the Arcane Surge, and we don't want to, like... The thing is, you could just get it in this cluster, right? You could get the Ancestral Inspiration and Sleepless Sentries, and then you could get, like, probably something better here. But the problem is that it puts more pressure of, like... Because finding a 2 notable, like, medium that has, like, decent notables is, like, hard, right? It's not an easy thing to do. So it can be kind of expensive. And the idea here is I don't want this to be like a super expensive thing coming on the gate. You'll see it says expensive version here, but the reason why I have that toggle as expensive is because I just take these other nodes. Like, what I would just say is, like, you remove this, right? And you remove this. And you remove this. And we don't lose much. You know what I mean? And what you would assume is these are only one notable mediums, because these are the only mediums you need. You want the onslaught, gives you totem duration, super nice. You want the taunt, that's the main thing we were looking to get from here. You want the arcane surge, and you want cold conduction for the 15% shock. That's the only thing that you like really want from these cluster jewels. So get them any way you can. If you can get them in a Megalo, that's perfect. If you can't, get them as singles, like this. If you can find one that has, like, I just put the next best alternative option, right? So fucking Streamlined is insane because of projectile speed. Ancestral Echo is really good because of placement speed, because we're not, keep in mind, we're not Hierophant, right? So we lose some implicit placement speed. Although this isn't the end of the world because we have a lot of other ways to get placement speed. The main one is Inspiration, because you don't have other ways to get Arcane Sword. You don't have as many easy ways, right? So, yeah. That one's really good. Don't have any other way to get Taunts, and don't have any other way to get Onslaught, really, aside from using the Incursion Boots, which are bad. So you want those. You want Cold Conduction, because you don't have anything else that can produce a similar effect. So those are the main things that you want. And the Cold Conduction one is based on the non-damaging ailment effect. This one's in the spell damage large. This is the totem medium, and this is the projectile medium. So that's how you get all those. Otherwise, you just throw in 2 first snows. And where's my other gem here? I think we have the other gem somewhere. Oh yeah, we have a Self-Flagnation in like one of these, right? And there's a Watcher's Eye in here. Watcher's Eye, again, not needed, really. It's just 10% more damage on your Zealotry, which is nice, but it's not gonna make a break. You could even, honestly, like, the best one for this build, well, no, because there's no mana anymore. I was gonna say it might be the defensive one that gives, like, mana. I would say that if you're not running this Blood Magic, which I'll talk about in a second, then the Watcher's Eye for clarity that gives energy shield based on mana, it's like 18% or something like that, is probably better in here, just to have a bit more defense if you're not going Blood Magic. But since we're going Blood Magic, that has no use at all. So yeah. And then the rest of the tree is pretty simple. Just getting, like, life and res and stuff where it's easy. I would say if you don't have these clusters that have, like, the good other nodes in there, you take those 3 points and you just slap them into this. And you have actually very similar damage. It's just that you don't have some of the utility. Like, you don't have the prod speed, you don't have the placement speed. You don't have the... This one's kind of, like, more damage than it looks like in the thing, because this doesn't reflect the shock damage. Like, I would put the shock up to 18%, because I think it would add an additional, like, 3% more, or around 4% more damage. So that one's pretty good in particular, but again, like, none of these are make or break. Now you're gonna see this Chainbreaker thing here, and this is for when you get Divergent Berserk. I would say, before you get Divergent Berserk, you could actually consider potentially using, let me go, Timeless Jewels. Okay. So you could do, I think it's Glorious Vanity is the one. And it's like Doriani, I want to say. Right now we have Chainbreaker in there. What Chainbreaker does is it gives you, or the one that gives you Chainbreaker, which is Akoya, it gives you access to Rage. It's also nice because it gives you a bit of extra strength, which gives you HP and helps your Righteous Providence here. But Chainbreaker is going to allow you to have Rage, and it's going to basically just allow you to use Berserk. And what it is you'll use Berserk, and your Rage will basically tick down eventually, and then it'll kind of go back up again. It'll refill. You don't get the lose 5 Rage when you hit an enemy because you're not hitting anything. So it actually goes down like way slower than normal, and you have a super good uptime on the buff. So it's really, really strong. But the problem is it only works with Divergent Berserk, and Divergent Berserk is probably going to be insane in price. So I'll show you what it looks like, though, when we have Divergent Berserk up. We see 1,000,000 damage per totem there. We go to like 1.5 almost. When you have that up with fucking Righteous Fire here, you're like almost 2 million per totem. It's crazy, right? So Divergent Berserk, very good, but it might be more of a late game thing. If you want to get one, and these are cheap early game, I would go with the defensive option, which is, but this would only be if you're leeching, I would say. Well, you could use it without leeching, but you could throw in a one of these in, and this makes it so you're gaining a decent chunk more energy shield, right? The problem is things bypass your ES. So typically, when you play this playstyle, you're either going to need to be really active on using your flasks to mitigate the fact that things are just going through your ES normally. And you also want to like be able to replenish your ES because now it's like a bigger source of your overall mitigation, right? Which means that you'd want to use, I don't have it here, but you'd want to use Soul Tether, and it gives you like Immortal Ambition, which I believe gives you like Overleech and just lets you, let's see if it like says what it, it allows you to like Overleech, and it'll fill your energy shield up. If it's like, it'll fill your life up first, and then if your life is full, it'll just continue to fill your ES. So it's a really good like synergy there. Like the priority order works well. And then what you would do is you would just use a I'm just gonna actually 1 second check out what the shield is named, because I forgot. I think it's like, oh, Troll Timber's Fire. Let's crank this up, and you'd add this to the build in place of that, and you'd still have pretty good fucking damage, honestly, but now you have Leech, because it leeches your totem's Leech life to you, and it's honestly really strong, and it gives you some extra life regen, which is just nice in general. So this is a really good shield. The cool thing about stuff like this too, about using like seemingly shit uniques, is you can kind of just corrupt them for what you want, especially because it's super easy to even get colors on this, right? Because it's low level anyway. So a really good corrupt on this would be like this, right? Would be super good. These could be good depending on what you wanted to like put in there, I guess. Like we are going to use one aura, so you could have the +2 to aura gems in there, but it's probably not the biggest deal in the world. I would stay away from these. I think you'd probably either want this, or you'd want this or this. The life is never bad, but it's not particularly good. I think the block, investing into the block is not as good, I would say. I would grab one of these. These are going to be super helpful. just help reduce some of that fizz damage that you're going to be taking and put it in something you have a lot more mitigation for, right? So I would take, obviously not the Chaos one, but I would grab one of these, or the Reduced Critical Strike one is what I'd be going for. And obviously you can double corrupt it and get multiple things on it, which would be really good. Like, I think you can still get 2 of these, and if you actually got like 2 of these, it'd be insane. At that point, you're pretty defensive. If you are going to run a shield, what I would do is I would take the 2 points out of this, and I would come down, and I would get Glancing Blows. It's going to put you +1 over. You can remove like 1 point from like anywhere if you really need to, or just get another level. Like, you could remove this if like you really needed to. But the thing with Glancing Blows is that, give me 1 second. Wow. What would happen in the middle of this? Okay. Sorry about that. I don't want to restart this again. But, so the thing about Glancing Blows is that, like, in some sense, like, you can do a bunch of calculations, where, like, people are going to be like, oh, you know, like, the mitigation is not really that good from this, because when you block normally, you block full, right? The thing is this is just to prevent you from getting one shot, which is why it's good, right? It's that's the main thing here. It's about damage smoothing, especially when you have Leech, right? Damage smoothing is the biggest thing. So, yeah, I would definitely grab this if you're using the Leech shield. Something I've been doing recently is I've actually been coming down to Unwavering Stance, but that's going to be a lot harder to make work in this build in general. You're going to kind of like lose more damage for sure. So, I don't know. It's just something you'll have to think about if you want to do that or not. But it definitely is nice having Unwavering Stance. If you don't have Unwavering Stance, you really want to use the Brine King's the Pantheon, the stun one. It's like super important. But yeah. So that, again, this is something you can do if you want to like have a bit more life. The problem with this though is that this changes all the stuff that it encounters. So you're probably at this point unspecking out of like this, right? Because it's not going to be the Totem node anymore unless it's something good. The thing is, like, you hope it doesn't destroy this too bad, but you're probably going to want to reallocate points from these anyway if you have this jewel in, because it's just not going to be the same at that point. Like, these are probably going to get changed to something shit. If they get changed to something awesome, then you have like a Pog jewel, right? And for your build, and it's just really good. But it's unlikely that they're going to remain something that's particularly good for you. The pathing nodes don't matter as much, right? Because they were only attributes anyway, so they weren't doing a lot for you beforehand anyway. So it's pretty much with the attributes. It's like if anything rolls on them that's good, then that's awesome. But the notables, you're probably going to lose to something else. So I'm just going to put the other jewel back in for now. Okay. Now, how to level this, right? So, I think I'm going to be trying Spellslinger. I'm about to go practice with that. So if you want to watch me level the build, I'll be probably doing that intermittently for the remainder of the night until like super late. Because I want to get some practice in with it. But Spellslinger I think is like 31 or 28. But Ziz says to switch at like 31. So like my plan before that is pretty much like the standard stuff. Act 1... use like the traps and the mines, like Stormblast Mine, Orbistorms, Frost Bomb, Explosive Trap, like use some combination of those to just kind of get you through. After that, I tend to use brands, like the Lightning Brand or whatever it's called, and Storm Brand. and Wave of Conviction. I find that works like really well. Usually, especially with flat added damage on your wands from the recipe, the vendor recipe. You can use pretty much anything other than that, but that's pretty good. I think Stormblast Mine and Orb of Storms with Wave of Conviction still works pretty good at that point. So any combination of that stuff works just fine, in my opinion. And then Spellslinger is the reason why I'm looking into Spellslinger is because usually at like level 31 or so, or like low 30s, on Hyro it's a big power spike, right? Because you get Lab and you get a third totem. And a third totem is kind of huge for clear, in my opinion. I think it also gave you some placement speed, and it gave you like the percent of damage if you're killing things along the way, right? But the problem is that you could probably still go totems, but you're going to be losing out on you're not going to have a lot of the totem, the feel good totem stuff. You're not going to have the duration. You're not going to have much placement speed. You're not going to have, although I don't think you got a ton of placement speed from this node originally, if I remember correctly. But let me see if is this a totem character. You can see. Oh yeah, you actually didn't get placement speed from this. But I mean, still having the totem at all helps, the 3 totems. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm probably going to wait until at least level 38, which is I think when you get multiple totem, to actually go the totem build. So I'd probably be using Spellslinger from like 28 or 31 to at least like 38 would probably be the quickest I'd swap. I'm going to do some testing tonight, I think, and depending on how it feels, I might just keep Spellslinger going like for Blood Aqueduct and stuff and then swap after that. It's just going to depend. I'll try and post an update tomorrow, probably before things pop off. Or maybe like later on tonight in terms of what I'm exactly going to be doing with that, but I have to do some more testing. I just wanted to get the general video out. Battlemage is going to be super good early on. That's the one you want to get first. Then you could definitely, if you're on softcore, since you know you're probably going to be getting Uberlab super quickly, I think this is the next obvious power spike. And then you would just kind of like complete these almost at the same time, if that makes sense. But if you're not sure if you're going to get Uberlab done for a bit, I would definitely grab this and then grab this, because you want Inevitable Judgment with Instruments of Virtue, right? So that you're penning for all the weird elements that are not cold that you're getting from your weapon, if you're going to be using something like this. So I definitely go this first, then go through here. If you're not planning on getting Uberlab quickly, if you're planning on getting Uberlab super quick, like if you're just going to find the trials and the chat or whatever, you can probably just grab this for more power in the moment, and then just kind of like plow your way down to this and be fine. But I think for the safest order, just grab this, go here, and then grab this last. Now, you're going to notice dexterity is low. That's because of kind of like how I just have the gear set up here. But obviously you can just take like this or something like that, you know, to help. You could take this, remove points from other places like I had here. Remove stuff like this, you know what I mean, or stuff like this if needed. You could even run across bottom here if you're really trying to save points. So there's a bunch of things you can do to like mitigate those hurdles if you're having trouble with stats. But again, it's not going to be really a problem in most cases, just how I have the gear set up. A matter of fact, off the bat, you're going to have Kikizarus here. Oh, that's what I should explain too. So how are we getting the 100% curse reduction and stuff like that? So also, before I mention this, ignore that if you haven't played Soul Mantle in a while, ignore the bottom text in red there. It doesn't matter at all as long as you get 100% curse reduction. Because more and like the more effect and the reduced are on a like different, they're completely different things, essentially. So as long as you get 100% reduced effective curses on you, you're absolutely fine. We do that by using, ideally, 2 normal Crusader rings, which have, they need a minimum of 34%. You could probably have one with like 33 or 32, and then another one with 35 or 34, but the idea is that when you use a catalyst on them, they go to like above 40, and then you use 2 of these, and you anoint this. Again, you can get creative with this and anoint something else on the tree if you want, and come down to pick this up, but I feel like in most cases it's going to be, especially at the start, most cost effective to just anoint Sanctum of Thought and use the 2 rings. There's also another, you can use a Cluster Jewel, which has a notable that when you have a flask up, you have like 40% or something curse reduction. So you can either, if you really want, you can use that and skip this entirely, or you can use it to make one of your rings not a Redeemer ring, or a Kikazaru or something like that. What I was going to say is, at the start, you're going to be having 2 Kikazarus in these slots. So, you're not going to have to worry about attributes nearly as much. Because you can get like 30 from the both of those. And then if you really need to, you can put the attribute catalyst on them, and you'll get even more. So attributes shouldn't be a problem. Those catalysts are super cheap and stuff like that. But the thing that I wanted to highlight, the reason why I wanted to talk about attributes is because you're going to see 212 dexterity requirement. This is from the rapier. The solution to this, I just threw this one on quick, is you use like a lower level one, right? You craft on a low level one that has the requisite item level that you need. Or you probably just want to use for a while until you get things sorted out, or Rebuke of the Vol. And that brings the requirement to something down that's like a lot more reasonable. You can just get like a bit more extra dexterity and you'll be fine. So the dex is something you'll have to play around with, but it's like more than worth it for being able to use like a super cheap weapon, right? So yeah, I just wanted to mention a bit about the dex. There's obviously, you can just grab this one again. We're already at 138. You have a Kikazaru on, especially early on, and you're set. You can do dual Kikazarus with the catalyst again. So, yeah. Just wanted to make you guys aware of that. If you really don't want to use Sanctum of Thought in like right off the bat too, you can catalyst your Kikazarus, and I think they'll go up to probably like 47 or 48% or something like that, and you'll be pretty close to 100% curse like effectiveness anyway. So I don't know, just something to think about if you don't want to waste your anoint on that. But I think in most cases it works pretty well. Is there anything else I wanted to cover? I think I mentioned the leveling, covered the attributes, covered the Leech variant. I would say don't underestimate the Leech variant. A lot of the stuff for it is really cheap, and it's pretty damn strong. Having Leech in your totems gives you a nice boost to life. And especially if you are running it with the other Timeless Jewel before you get Divergent Berserk, and you're using a shield that's been corrupted properly, you actually get quite a bit of defense. So it's kind of underrated in my opinion, for sure. I should probably talk about it. So again, Self-Flagnation, double for snow, use whatever one of these you want. For the aura, we're going to be using Zealotry, just because it's more damage since we have damage from multiple elements. If you had like an insane Hatred Watcher's Eye, you could just throw a Hatred on there and it'd be more damage, you know what I mean? Like, depending on what Watcher's Eye you have, your aura can do more things for you, clearly. These are just like kind of standard jewels, right? Well, these are cluster jewels, and this is just like a standard. You want to kind of get double multi in life if you can on those, unless you need something else, like res or something. Getting res is going to be really easy with this build because you're like curse immune or whatever. So, oops. I don't know what I did there. Oh, I just fucked something up, but it's fine. It's kind of at the end of the video anyway. Malachi's Awakening, I guess, is the last thing I wanted to talk about. So, this is like not necessary at all, but it adds like a decent amount of damage. You're obviously not going to have this right off the bat. Early on, you just run like auras, right? You just run like an aura. You can probably even, you're not going to have this allocated to something else. So you can probably just take, you could take this if you wanted for Mind Over Matter. You have to be a little careful because you may have mana issues. So you may just want to not do that. And before you allocate into Malachi's Awakening, taking something like Arcane Will is honestly pretty good. You may want to just run through the bottom here and pick up Arcane Will. It'll really help with mana and stuff like that. But yeah, so you can see if we take that out, we lose a lot of damage, but it's not anything insurmountable. So yeah. Anyway, I think that's pretty much it. This is probably way too long already. But you know, I kind of like to be thorough with these. In terms of flasks, you're just going to use defensive flasks, a health flask, a quicksilver, and you can use an series for the conversion, right? I don't think there's anything much else of note. Obviously, on the boots, you don't want pen. You want to stay away with all sources of pen with this build because the idea is that your damage is going to be just ignoring their resistances, not penning in most cases because it's going to be critting. So you want to have the lightning damage here, which is nice because it's easier to get. For the gloves, I have the ones from Incursion here that give the burning damage if the enemy is burning, which it will be because you're going to have some source of fire damage, but you're probably better off just running the projectile speed Elder Gloves, I think. You can get Elder Gloves with prod speed on them, and that'll be better because prod speed is pretty important. You obviously want the freeze pulse prod speed, but again, this build works. It should work for arc or anything. Like pretty much any skill can be used on this, right? The idea, though, is that skills that have a higher effective damage are going to be better. You know, they're going to take advantage of it better because of Battlemage. You're going to want Stygian, obviously, unless you're using the other belt for Leech. And just using a normal damage amulet with life is good there. Yep, that's pretty much it. So again, thanks so much for watching, and I hope this guys helps you. I hope this helps you if you wanna. Oh, the links would be a really fucking good idea to show you, huh? I think I already kind of did, but these are the links. Again, doesn't even have a 6th link in there. Still doing big damage. Arcane Surge. I just have a level 1 in there to simulate getting it from the Threshold Jewel. I think that's what I removed there. And then Lightning Golem, if you have room. Fall Rageous Fire, Sniper's Mark, Cast on Damage Taken, Immortal Call setup. Is good. And, yeah. That's pretty much everything. Go into the configuration here. So, obviously, this is going to be easy to keep up 24/7. Flask active, yes. Totem summoned, yes. You can get power charges from a brand setup, and like any sort of storm brand setup, or you can even use like Orb of Storms if you want or something like that. It's very easy to get charges. Just have the curses activated here. You have it on Shaper. Enemies on Conk Ground. The shock effect is from the cold conduction. And yeah, just really easy to keep up the crit chance. I don't even know if we have Onslaught activated here, yeah. So that's pretty much everything. Again, thanks for watching, and hope you guys have a good one. Any questions, just leave them in the comments. So, thanks.